swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Please take a seat. And state your name for the record.
Willie Lewis.
Mr. Lewis, when did this controversy first arise, so to speak, become public?
With a blog post, I believe in October.
In October or August?
August.
Okay, sorry. What did you do immediately upon that blog post coming out as in your capacity as sheriff of Greenville County?
I directed my chief deputy and my legal counsel with the sheriff's office to contact the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division because there were allegations in there that obviously were allegations of criminal nature.
Okay. And did SLED talk to people in your office?
They did.
Okay. Did they ever ask to talk to you?
They never asked to talk to me. SLED never spoke with me. Solicitor's office never spoke with me. No one ever spoke with me regarding this case.
Tell us, if you would, a little bit about your background.
Graduated high school in 1994. Tried college for about a semester, which was not my thing. Went to the United States Air Force. Left the United States Air Force in the latter part of 1998, I believe, and then transitioned to law enforcement. I left the Air Force a little bit early to go into law enforcement. Started my career in Greenwood City, where my wife was attending college at the time, and went from there to the Greenville City Police Department because she graduated. We wanted to move back to Greenville. Came back to Greenville and went to Greenville City Police Department, and then left Greenville City and was kind of transient there for a little bit between Greenville City and Pickens County. Had met a good friend in Pickens County and went to work with him. Left Pickens County and came back to the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, and in I believe 2011 I resigned from the Greenville County Sheriff's Office. Started back to school full time for a short period of time, and took a job with the Bannister White and Stalky law firm. And then shortly thereafter, it came about that there was an opportunity for me to run for sheriff. Took that opportunity.
When did you start the Bannister Law Firm?
February, I believe, of 2012. I believe the latter part of 2000.
And you worked there until when?
2015, I believe, the beginning of 2015.
And while you were working there, did Savannah Davis work there?
She did.
And what was her job there?
She was the paralegal for Alex Stolby.
Right. And did you have a chance to observe her working ability with Alex Stolby?
I did.
And what was your opinion of it?
She was very astute for someone her age. She did a really good job keeping Alex on track. He's a great guy, but he's pretty scattered. He's a little difficult to keep up with. It was difficult to keep Alex on schedule. So with Savannah being able to keep him on schedule, she had a demeanor about her, kind of an almost demanding type of demeanor, authoritative demeanor, that kept Alex in line. She did all of his legal papers for him. She did his scheduling. She did his client contact. All of those things together, keeping up with that, all while going to school at the same time.
So when did you make a decision to run for the office of sheriff?
Probably, it was a conversation in progress, so I would say probably sometime around mid-2015.
And was there any particular reason you decided to run for sheriff?
After working at the sheriff's office for such an extensive period of time, there were some major deficiencies in the leadership. The leadership of Greenville County at the time lacked a human element, one that would allow the deputies an opportunity to speak with administration or command staff. There wasn't necessarily a level of fear, but amongst the deputies, if you crossed someone or you did something wrong, it was just easier to cut your head off and send you packing than it was to try to address a situation or something along those lines. Those deputies didn't need to work in fear of that kind of stuff. So I thought that I could probably do a better job.
Did you have some ideas or concepts about how to revise positions at the sheriff's department?
Yes, sir, many.
And what were they?
It's a pretty extensive list.
Well, don't get too extensive, but we'll hear a few.
We developed multiple programs. One of the programs was the Office of the Sheriff. It was a brand new program, a brand new concept, where law enforcement gave a division from the Sheriff's Office an opportunity to reach back out to the community. They were in-depth, they were in the communities, they were comprised of civilians and also certified law enforcement officers. They didn't wear uniforms, but they would go out, they didn't police or patrol.
Let me interrupt you 1 second.
Yes, sir.
When you say office of the sheriff,
Yes, sir.
everybody assumes there's always an office of the sheriff.
That was
So
always
exactly
confusing.
what is the office of the sheriff?
That's confusing. The Office of the Sheriff is an actual separate division of the Sheriff's Office that is a community outreach program. It's not the Office of the Sheriff like my office. It is an actual group of people that work together to basically make the Sheriff's Office more transparent to the community, determine what programs need to be done in specific communities, maybe underserved communities or something along those lines, higher crime communities, things like that. And develop programs for those. You heard some of the programs earlier that Martine was able to develop. The 23 Heart program, the Adopt a Cop program fell under that, where the community was allowed to basically adopt a law enforcement officer. And the schools were adopting law enforcement officers, kids were adopting law enforcement officers, and they would send them just gifts like, bags of candy or thank you notes or something along those lines. Resonated extremely well. We actually were going back around to where deputies had multiple adopted families. They would show up to those families, show up to those classrooms, talk to the people, thank you for adopting me. It was not uncommon to see them have dinner with somebody that had adopted them or something along those lines. Yes, sir.
So, when did you first start planning your staff for this job?
Well, I spoke with, during the course of the election itself, I was trying to identify people who were predominantly good figures, good speakers, people that I thought would work well within the sheriff's office. There were, I guess, probably starting around the time that I started to run for office, I started looking for people to identify.
And what kind of people were you looking for what position?
Well, I knew that I was going to need a community director for the Office of the Sheriff program. That was one, and Martine ultimately took that. I knew I was going
Did that position exist before?
No, sir.
Sure.
No, sir. That position existed after I came in. I created many positions within the Sheriff's Office.
And what else did you look for?
I was looking for people who were educated, were go-getters, were driven. I was looking for people who did not lack in ideas, people who were outside the box thinkers. I was really looking, because law enforcement had just this bad, stale atmosphere at the time where everybody thought that law enforcement was an occupying military force. And we were trying to really kind of get away from that, more of a group of people that were there to help.
And what did you look for in an administrative assistant?
Well, prior to me, didn't need
Well,
to be.
that's a better question.
Okay.
Why did you think one was needed?
Well, okay, so prior to my winning the election, my predecessor, Mr. Loftus, there were multiple complaints from within the Sheriff's Office command staff. He would not meet with people throughout the agency. He let his other people make all of these decisions that he never heard. He would not respond to emails, phone calls. We pulled his actual identification card during the course of the election. I think he showed up to work for 77 days. the year before the election, so he never went to work. He never kept up with anything. Jackie Cooper was his administrative coordinator at the time, and it was evidently clear that Jackie either could not do the job or that Sheriff Office did not listen to her. I don't know which one it was. So I knew that going into that position, as high energy as I was, that it was going to be difficult for me to get myself out of one office to the next office, to meet with people, to talk with people, to engage with people in the community. So I needed somebody to keep me on track for that. I knew that the sheriff received a ton of emails a day. And I would say it would not be an understatement to say hundreds of emails a day from people. From whether somebody trying to sell something or events that you were invited to or things like that. Somebody had to keep that for me. Somebody had to open those emails. Somebody had to check those because I was very out there sheriff. It was not uncommon for me to just get up and leave the office at 10 o'clock in the morning and run down the road to start answering calls.
So, what people did you start looking to for an administrative assistant?
I was looking for someone who had flexibility, someone who was very capable of being on call, who was not going to affect their personal life, wasn't going to affect their family life, somebody who was smart enough to hold the position, someone who was also very put together in the sense that they could, again, schedule and calendar. It was really, really necessary because this person was going to be taking notes for closed-door meetings, sometimes that were of a pretty personal nature involving employees. Maybe they had some issues or some problems or some medical issues or just different things, and they were private nature, HIPAA, that kind of stuff. So I needed somebody that was there to be able to document those incidents, those things that went on. So somebody who could take dictation was necessary.
Could you tell us who you first started looking at, some various people?
During the course of the election, I identified one man. His name was Patrick DeStefano. Patrick was a guy who was a real go-getter. He was young. He was a college graduate. He was very capable of doing the job. I don't mind telling you, as a football fan, the fact that he had been on a couple of ACC championship teams didn't hurt my feelings either. He was a real go-getter. Patrick ultimately, before the election came through, hooked up with another campaign and ended up moving to Washington, D.C. Another guy I was looking at, he was here local. He was a local graduate and had done a few things here locally. Had jumped on a couple of campaigns and really helped out. I looked at him. He ultimately took a position with a senator that was elected and was working as his chief of staff or communications director maybe. After that, I moved to the paralegal type of position because it had all the qualifications that I needed. Terry Coker was my first pick.
And obviously you'd seen Terry at work?
I had seen Terry at work, yes.
And you, how she worked?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you have discussion with her?
I did.
And the problem there was?
Terry didn't want to give up her evening hours. That's not something she wanted to do. She had a grandchild, fairly new grandchild, and Terry didn't want to give up the time that she was able to spend with her grandchildren.
And did you explain to her that it would be evening work?
She was exactly right when she said that my response was 2 steps behind and 2 steps to the left. Actually, that is exactly how I put it.
Okay. And then you talked to Savannah?
I did. I talked to Savannah about it. I ran into her in the back parking lot of the Bannister White and Stalby law firm. I would go by and check on those guys on occasion. And I ran into her in the back lot and we discussed it.
Did she ultimately accept it?
She ultimately accepted.
And started to work when?
She started to work during the transition. I would say started showing up at meetings sometime around November for the transition meetings of 16?
Now, did you know anything about the budgeting process for a sheriff's department?
Very limited.
And where did you go for guidance on that?
County administrator,
And who was that?
Joe Colonel.
And did you see Mr. Cornell, after you got elected?
I did.
Right? And what did you discuss with him about funding these positions?
I told him there were multiple positions that I wanted to create, that I wanted to start.
Well, let me back up first. Did he explain to you about the budget process and with the county and the sheriff's office?
A limited amount. I had some limited discussion with him about the budget at the time. We had, just kind of perused it a little bit.
So, how was salaries determined?
The salaries of the Greenville County Sheriff's Office are set on a pay scale that the Sheriff's Office does not have. That pay scale was established by the county of Greenville.
Right, that's for the regular officers.
That's for everyone.
Right, but how about the new positions that you were trying to create?
So if we were creating a position, it would have to fit within the parameters of a pay scale for the county government.
And how would they determine what the pay scale was or what, so forth?
By title, by job title. So whatever the job title was, that was indicative of a specific pay scale.
And did you, how many new positions do you think you created?
Mr. Wise, I do not remember. I created a good number of positions to the point where I was told that you can create no more positions. You can't do any more.
And pay scale was discussed with who?
Joe
Pay
Cornell.
range was discussed with who?
Joe Cornell.
Right, and what did you find out about the pay range for various positions?
I don't remember all the pay ranges, what they were. I remember that there were certain pay ranges that covered, like an administrative assistant would cover between here and here, and then the administrative coordinator would cover between here and here. And then I'm sure there were positions above that. I just don't know what they were.
And what did Savannah Neighbor's position fall into?
Administrative coordinator.
And what was that pay range?
If I recall correctly, it was between 58 and 72,000.
What about Martina?
The same.
Okay. And she was what title did she have, or what position did she hold?
Martine was, and she'll have to give up every year, but it was communications director or something along those lines for community outreach.
And who gave you those pay ranges?
Joe Cornell.
Now, the budget money for, I assume, for the sheriff's office had been allocated for the year 2017 when you took office.
Yes, sir. I believe it ran until July of that year.
So how would a new position be able to be created with a budget that's already set?
Joe Cornell would have to basically reallocate a position or assign a position to us at the sheriff's office so that we could fund it, so that we could have it, because the salary is already set for the remaining portion of the sheriff's office from the previous budget.
Now, there was also talk about you and Savannah being hired actually before you were sworn in.
That's correct.
And you were technically then working for whom?
I was working for the county of Greenville as an administrative coordinator.
And Savannah was working
For the county of Greenville as an administrative coordinator.
for those roughly month and a half.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, how did the idea of, I guess, getting a car and so forth come about?
Any position that is an on-call position at the sheriff's office has a vehicle. If you're subject to call out after hours, normal duty hours, anything like that as a civilian employee, you will have a vehicle assigned to you.
And that was Martine an on-call position?
Martine was an on-call position, and Martine had a car.
And so how do you go about getting automobiles for at least those two, if not others, with a budget that's already set?
So they went to.
When you say
they being, okay, so I'm not exactly sure who went and ordered the cars, but someone from the command staff ordered the vehicles for the on-call employees.
Okay. You didn't put in a request for a specific type of car?
No, sir.
Okay. So, things come around and you get sworn in,
Yes, sir.
and you create new positions.
Yes, sir.
And how were things going early on?
Things were very well. Things were going, during a transition as smooth as they could. Prior to me, it was 40 consecutive years of incumbency. That regime had been there for 40 years. I was the first person in my lifetime to knock that off for the sheriff's position. So there were a lot of changes to be made because everything had become stagnant and stayed that way for so long. There were just a lot of changes to be made.
Now, it's been mentioned that you told Ty Miller that basically I'm keeping you because you would keep me in my place, or words to that effect.
Ty was unique. Ty and I did not get along. We never really personally gotten along, and we're polar opposites in almost every single way. Ty was a person who strongly opposed me getting elected. She did not like me personally. She did not like me professionally. But I thought that it would be a really good idea to not only keep Ty, but put Ty in a position that would be a leadership position, because she would be in such a place that she could offer a counterbalance to my strong personality when it came to law enforcement.
Was she a yes person?
Absolutely not.
So you're working, and then the idea of the budget comes up. What was the concerns with the budget?
Over the course of, I don't even know how long, the Greenville County Sheriff's Office budget preparation was take last year's budget and add 2% or 2.17% or whatever the inflation rate is currently. That was not getting anything done. You could not get anything done with that. The deputies were still underpaid. The command staff, there were people on command staff levels that had been there forever who were completely underpaid. There were vehicles that had upwards to 250 to 300,000 miles on them. The equipment was outdated. There were all kinds of major issues with the equipment, not just for the deputies themselves, but also the radio systems that affected the entire county. I mean, just all kinds of things. That 2% just wasn't cutting it.
So did you have plans about requesting more money?
I did.
First of all, I think you've been testified to about it, but as sheriff, you don't raise money.
No, sir.
Directly as such.
No, sir.
Right. So your funding has to come from where?
The funding has to come from the county of Greenville.
And your salary is determined by whom?
The county of Greenville.
Right. You don't have any control over what they decide to pay you,
No,
or
sir.
your deputies?
No, sir.
Okay. So you see these problems. How much did you even have an idea as to how much more money you would need?
With the administrative captain and a few other people, we put together some numbers. And what we were trying to do was start by bringing everyone up to level, at least bring them pretty close to where they at least should be making what the average was throughout the country. We were able to put some numbers together to bring all that up. We started with the command staff. There were captains that were making $50,000 a year when they started becoming a captain. We increased their salaries to $85,000 a year per. I think since they've been raised to like 90 or somewhere around there. We were able to bring the lieutenant's pay up. I don't remember how much it was, but we were able to bring them up to a pretty solid salary. At least try to somewhat come close to what the rest of the country was doing. Greenville County was so far below everybody else. We were trying to make it comparable.
How did the idea of a budget meeting out of town come about?
Joe Cornell and I talked multiple times. We tried to get together. We tried to sit down. We tried to find times on our schedule. It just wasn't working. I mean, there were 3 people from the county that needed to be involved. It was Joe, John Hansley, and Shannon Herman. I needed Marcus there with me. I needed Savannah, because Savannah had collected all of the information from all of my division commanders. I had asked her to go out and tell them that we needed what was called a wants and a needs list. What is it that you absolutely have to have to function, and what is it that you want, so that we can prepare for future goals.
What about Jackie Cooper, who had been doing some budgeting for the sheriff's department?
To my knowledge, Jackie never done any budgeting for the sheriff's office. I never knew Jackie Cooper to do any budgeting for the sheriff's office.
Do you know anybody that did do real budgeting for the sheriff's office?
You're qualifying that by saying real budgeting. Yeah, nobody ever did any real budgeting for the sheriff's office. There was never any real budgeting. There was just a 2% that they would add every single year.
Okay. And I can't remember the lady who testified earlier about doing the raises at 2%.
Linda Cobb.
Linda Cobb, that's who I was thinking about. What about her?
Linda does really good for what she does, which is to process paperwork. Linda has no knowledge of what the deputies in the sheriff's office do every single day. That's just not something that she has a whole lot of knowledge of.
So you proposed this idea of going to Charlotte?
It was proposed. I recall it differently. I remember Joe saying, "Hey, we need to go out of town to do the budget meeting." That's what I recall.
And did you volunteer to make the arrangements?
We did. He asked if Savannah could make the arrangements for us to get out of town. We had decided on either Atlanta or Charlotte.
Now, did you know Joe Cornell before, or Mr. Hensley before this?
No, sir.
Had you met either one of them?
Briefly, I met Joe Cornell over a lunch shortly after I was elected, but that was probably about a 45-minute meeting. John Hansley, I had seen in passing and spoken to, hey, hello, but that was pretty much it.
Okay. Now, so this was finally arranged over a period of how long?
You mean from the inception of the idea?
Right.
A few weeks.
Right. And so y'all finally picked a day. Was there any particular reason you picked during the week as opposed to the weekend?
No, sir. I don't remember how the day got picked.
Right. So y'all arranged this meeting in Charlotte?
We did.
Right. And who all was going?
It was myself and Marcus Davenport, who was soon to be the chief deputy, and Joe Cornell, and John Hansley, and Shannon Herman.
And so there would be 6 of you total.
There would be 6 of you, yes.
You agreed to drive Savannah?
I did.
Any particular reason that Marcus Davenport didn't ride with you?
Marcus went up earlier that day. I don't know why he went up earlier that day. I stayed back that evening. I thought that I had gone to the county council meeting that night. That's my recollection. But it was said that I was at dinner that evening, so I'm with my wife. So
Okay.
I don't remember.
Right. So you went and picked Savannah up.
I did.
Right. Vincent, talk about the liquor bottle. Tell us about it.
When I go out of town, if I'm gonna drink, when I go out of town, sometimes I don't like to pay the bar prices or something like that. So it's not uncommon for us to take a bottle of wine or a bottle of liquor or something like that if we're going out of town that we have from our own personal stock.
Was this a big or small bottle?
The bottle was, I think, 750 milliliters, but it was in a large tin container.
Would it fit in your suitcase?
No, sir.
Right. So how did it come about? Where was, when you picked Savannah up, where was the liquor bottle?
In the back of the car.
Okay. In the back, meaning
The rear trunk area space.
Okay. And where was your luggage?
In the rear trunk area space.
Okay. So when you picked Savannah up, where did her luggage go?
in the rear trunk area space.
Did you come in and use the restroom when you picked her up?
I did.
Use it in her room or bedroom or something?
I don't remember that. I remember going to a restroom. I don't remember going through her bedroom or to a master bathroom or anything like that.
So y'all take off to Charlotte.
Yes, sir.
Right? You get to the hotel, tell us about the situation then.
We get to the hotel in Charlotte, and Marcus is there. We check in, and
Well, let's go back before you check in, when you get the luggage out of the car.
getting the luggage out of the car. The way that the hotel was set up is when we pulled in, there was a parking garage that was attached to the hotel itself. Pulling into the parking garage, there was a valet. The valet is the one who checked us. We got our stuff out of the back of the car. I knew that I wasn't going to be driving anymore for the next couple of days. We were going to be doing all of our meetings right there on site. So I, instead of leaving the bottle of liquor in the car and having the valet bring it back around and having to tip the valet and then let him send the car back up, I took the bottle of liquor out with me. When I took the bottle of liquor out of my car, I laid it on top of Savannah's bag. I did not lay it.
Describe her bag.
It's one of those cloth, what my kids would describe as a Bear Bradley type bag. It was a cloth bag with handles that was on top. So if you set something on top of it, it just kind of closes itself.
Was it shut in any way?
I do not recall the bag being open.
Well, I mean, it's the bag, when you say you put it on top of it, what exactly do you mean?
I literally put it on top of a zipped bag. It was her bag was there. I laid it on top of the bag.
Okay. Did anybody put it in the bag?
I never saw anybody put it in the bag.
But you could carry it.
I did not put it in the bag.
You could carry it with the handles.
If once you pick the handles up, the bag was just kind of enclosed around it. You just pick it up and carry it.
And the liquor bottle would go with it.
Yes.
Okay. So you go check in, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what happened after that?
We checked in, and we went to our rooms and dropped off our luggage. Came back downstairs for appetizers and drinks.
I think your room was, what, 1310? What do you remember?
I don't remember.
Was there any thing done about arranging where the rooms would be in the hotel? As like all of you adjoining, all of you separate, or anything like that?
No, sir. Not to my knowledge.
And the instruction was what, just get rooms?
Yeah, just get the rooms.
All right, so you come down that evening,
Yes, sir.
and you'll have some appetizers and drinks in the hotel,
Yes, sir.
and you remember about what time John Hensley and the administrative crew got there?
No, sir, but it wasn't long after we were there.
All right. And y'all sat down there for a while.
We did.
Well, when you checked in, do you recall whether or not you didn't reserve the room on? Did you have a county credit card at that time?
I don't believe I did. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think I did at that time.
When you checked in, did they ask for a credit card for incidentals?
That's protocol. I don't remember giving them a credit card for incidentals, but I mean, that would be protocol.
You know what I'm talking about when you normally check in.
Yes, sir.
You have any recall one way or the other?
No, sir.
So y'all drink for a while and go out to eat?
We did.
And
Oh, no, sir. No, sir. We drank and ate at the same place. We were in the hotel bar for appetizers and drinks.
okay, right. I mean, you had your appetizers, and then
Yes,
y'all
sir.
went where? So then, what'd you do after the pub?
We left the pub. Did you say at the pub?
After the pub?
After the pub, we left. I don't think we went anywhere else. I think we came back to the hotel.
Anybody excessively intoxicated?
No, sir.
I assume theoretically anybody had anything to drink, they're intoxicated, but did you notice anybody having trouble? Did you remember an incident with Savannah when you were coming out of the pub?
I do.
And tell us about that.
I being silly, I reached down and told Savannah I could put her in a fireman's carry. I grabbed Savannah to throw her over my shoulder in a fireman's carry, and I was apparently not quite as strong as I thought I was, and started to lean forward. Stumbled a little bit, caught myself, caught her, and that was it.
Okay. So you come back to the hotel,
Yes, sir.
and what all of you do then?
We all went back to our rooms, or we were down on the elevator to get back to our rooms.
Okay. And do you know, do you have any recall today what floor anybody was on?
I do not.
Okay. So people, I assume when they get to that floor to get off,
Yes, sir.
well, ultimately, you and Savannah on the elevator,
We were.
right? Was that due to simply the location of the rooms?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, what happens when you get up to her floor?
We got up to Savannah's floor. I was going down to her room to retrieve my liquor bottle. I was going to have my nightcap and then go back.
Right? What happened then?
Went into Savannah's room, asked her if she would, if she wanted a drink before we knocked off for the evening. She said that was fine, and then I poured 2 cups, the little tumbler glasses that are in the hotel room. Poured 2 of those little tumblers of some drink and
Do you remember what the liquor was you had?
Jack Daniels.
Okay. So Jack Daniels.
Yes, sir.
Right. Y'all start having a conversation?
We did. Conversation was pretty limited, but I had sat down on the couch that was in Savannah's room, and then I immediately turned the television on because it was spring training or coming up on baseball. And I was watching baseball.
Okay. And then what happened?
Savannah sat down next to me, and we started to have just general conversation. There wasn't anything that was out of the ordinary about the conversation. And then, yeah.
Then what?
Then, within a couple of minutes, I had my arm kind of stretched out on the couch. Savannah kind of nudged up a little closer to me, and when she nudged up a little closer to me, we were talking pretty closely, and we kissed.
Right. Did it surprise you?
It surprised me, yes, sir.
You expected it?
And no, sir, I was not.
Right. Then what happened?
After Savannah and I kissed, the kiss became a little more hot and heavy, passionate, and then we moved around to the bed area. At which point, Savannah and I engaged in intercourse.
Who took whose clothes off?
Savannah was undoing my shirt and took a portion of my shirt off, and then she, to the best I can recall, she undid her pants and started to push them down, and then I pulled them off the rest of the way, and we engaged in intercourse.
Was anything done without her consent?
No, sir, nothing.
You recall her, she testified to a conversation earlier that was had toward the end of this episode. Do you recall that conversation?
I recall her conversation. She was positioned on top of me and made the comment that she must not be doing her job. And I asked her at that point if she wanted me to finish, and she said yes.
At any time was she unconscious?
No, sir.
Any doubt in your mind about it?
No, sir. No doubt in my mind.
What happened after that?
A million things went through my head. I knew at that point that I had violated my oath to my wife, as I said earlier. I was very, very bothered by the fact that I had cheated on my wife.
So what happened as far as what you did and she did? And by then it was what time?
I don't recall, it was early morning hours.
Okay.
I got up shortly thereafter and left and went back to my room.
Did she go to your room?
No, sir.
Okay. Next morning, what happened?
The next morning we got up. We had the budget meeting.
What time did you go have the budget meeting?
8:30ish, probably. We started the budget meeting. We left from while we were down there at the budget meeting for the initial portion. We discussed a few things. I was a little unprepared because Savannah had all of the materials that were necessary, and she was not present. She wasn't there.
Now, when you say Savannah had all the materials, what materials were those?
There were pamphlets that were gathered, that were put together. Each division from the sheriff's office had submitted, each captain had submitted the wants and needs list that we talked about earlier. Those wants and needs lists were submitted for the purpose of asking for what we needed from the budget. And she had all of that material in her room.
And who had put all that material together?
Savannah put all that material together.
So the first portion of the morning was, do you recall what you were discussing during the first portion of the morning?
It seems that we were just kind of talking about, that was really kind of my first introduction into how the budget actually worked, how it actually was formed, how things were put together, and then how it was actually made, what the county administrators did to get it passed, council and things like that.
And later y'all broke for coffee.
We did. It was a short while later we left to go up to get some coffee at Starbucks.
And did you call Savannah at that point?
I did call Savannah at that point because we were about done with what we could discuss without the rest of the materials that we needed. So I called Savannah to check in. Hey, what's going on? You all right? I said, we're running to get some coffee. And she said, I said, do you want anything? And she texted me, I believe she told me what she wanted. And when we hung up, I during the course of the conversation, asked her to text it to me because I don't do the whole Starbucks.
So you got a text from her describing what you were to get?
Yes.
Okay. I believe you got two.
I recall one text message. I recall the one that was the iced, now it's embedded in my brain, the iced caramel macchiato with whatever, how many pumps, and then the two little emoji laughing faces.
Right. So you go get the coffee and you're coming back.
Yes.
And you find Savannah catches up with you then?
She's walking up the street towards us when we're walking back towards the hotel.
She get a coffee?
I believe so.
And you walk back to the hotel?
We did.
And continue discussions?
We did.
Right. And so you will continue to discuss. At this point, you had her material.
At this point, she had brought the material down, and we were able to go ahead and start with our requests.
Right. And this was, I assume, the specificity of this discussion compared to the earlier discussion was what?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
When the discussion you have after the coffee break about the budget, how specific specific was it compared to what you had before the break?
It was very specific. We went into detail about the things that we needed, that we were requesting. I don't remember exactly what the numbers are or what all the wants and needs were in the budget pamphlet that was submitted. I haven't seen that thing in almost 2 years. There were, I know that one of the major points that we were hitting on was salaries. The other thing we were hitting on was the vehicles and equipment. I knew the radio system was a major issue, major component, major problem with between the PAL 800 that they referred to earlier, the Motorola system, or whatever the other system was. And we discussed about that.
So, what were you planning to do with the vehicles that hadn't been done before?
So, we were going to ask for more money for vehicles up front and put them on a rotation, where ultimately instead of having to spend, $1.2, $1.8 million every 2 or 3 years, we were going to ask for a rotation in vehicles that would allow us to basically replace cars that came to a certain mileage before they became a problem or an issue. By doing that, it was going to lower some of our costs because we weren't going to have such an upfront hit. We were going to change vendors on the vehicles. Currently, at the time, they were spending, the vehicles were painted blue. I'm sure you guys have probably seen them, the blue and yellow striped cars. Those cars, because of the specialized paint that was on those vehicles for a period of time, cost, I want to say there was maybe like $2,000 more per car because of the specialized paint. We were going to ditch that paint, go with just a standard flat color, do a wrap on the vehicle instead that cost less money than having to stripe and paint up new cars. We were going to move from the old equipment that was in the cars to newer equipment. And one of the things that we complained about multiple times was the expense at the vehicle service center. There was another county entity that was it was a 20% upcharge for everything that we did over there when we could have it done by someone else cheaper. So we were trying to save money in multiple different areas with the vehicles.
Were these things you discussed with Joe Cornell and John Henson?
I did. I discussed them with John, Joe, and Shane.
Okay. And this was done at the meeting?
That is correct.
So then y'all break for lunch?
We did. We went to some little place that had it was like a gastro pub kind of thing, not too far from the hotel. Marcus is a pretty picky eater, so we kind of went for the, something that was like a burger and kind of joint. We went there, had some lunch. The whole time we were walking to the lunch, we had broken off in groups where they meet, Marcus and Shannon may be talking, and John and Joe and I, or John and I and Savannah and Joe, and we were discussing, at least in my conversations, I was discussing the budget with everyone and what exactly we were going to do, how did we think we were going to get it done, that kind of thing.
So the budget discussions continued during lunch?
Continued through lunch.
You go back to the hotel?
We did. We left lunch. We went back to the hotel. We got back to the hotel and resumed our position in the corner of the front lobby, which was a pretty big area. And we sat there, talked for a good while about more of the budget. It was a pretty relaxed atmosphere. We were able to really kind of get in our groove where we could freely and openly discuss some things about how we needed.
Let me ask you, if Joe Cornell agreed to your proposal, was that the end of it?
No, sir.
What would happen after that?
Joe Cornell would have to, with any major, it was my understanding that with any major increases in salaries or any major increases in equipment or vehicles or things like that, Joe Cornell had to approve that or have county council approve that. I'm sorry.
So there was another step once you got his approval?
To my understanding, yes, sir. That's what it was.
Would county council have a hearing if you didn't have his approval?
No, sir. The only way they would have ever heard it is if I would have slotted a minute meeting with county council.